Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Lorenz Manaig is a social media keto influencer and is studying to become a health coach. Lorenz is the host of the very popular Ketones and Coffee podcast, where he interviews experts, influencers, and everyday people who each have life-changing stories after discovering low carbohydrate and ketogenic lifestyles and changing their relationship with food. Lorenz is also the founder of Basic Keto Box, a Canadian-based company that curates healthy, non-GMO, keto-friendly snacks for people who are on ketogenic diets. Lorenz is also a finance major and worked in the finance industry for 5 years until he discovered the ketogenic way of eating, which gave him much more life, purpose, and freedom. He almost immediately saw relief from his symptoms of anxiety and depression and was able to start his company and his podcast. He believes that many people are suffering in silence, and he strives to tell his story and to share the stories of his guests in order to assist with people who need it. I was fortunate enough to be hosted on the Ketones and Coffee podcast on episode 93, titled Why We Should Focus Less on Calories, which dropped on September 12th, 2022. And it is an absolute honor to welcome Lorenz onto our show. Lorenz Manaig, welcome to welcome to Boundless Body Radio.
Hey, Casey, how are you doing, man? I appreciate you having me on today.
It's such an honor. Thank you for teaching me how to sort of correctly pronounce your last name. I got so in my head about like pronouncing it right or incorrectly. I even forgot the name of our show and started to invite you on to the How to Make a podcast, which is a totally different podcast. So I was hyper focused.
You nailed it, by the way. That was one of the best introductions. This is my very first time on another podcast, and I'm so excited. At the same time, like I said, I'm so nervous, but I'm so excited to be on here, and it's an honor.
Did I absolutely butcher the last name? Like, was I even in the ballpark?
Yeah, no, you were there, man.
Can we hear you pronounce it?
It's Manaig.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, yeah, wasn't great. I can work on my accent, but not too bad. So I was really surprised to hear that you haven't been hosted on any other shows. One thing that I really love to do when I find a new podcast that I love, which I absolutely love your show. You do a great job hosting great guests. I love the content. I love how you conduct your interviews. It's very uplifting and positive, and I feel like you have such a great message to share. And one of my favorite things is I'd love to go and scroll all the way down to the very first episode where I can find, generally speaking, the story of the host of the show. And sure enough, scrolling all the way down, you started right out of the gate with an interview. And you've done some solo podcasts where you've been able to interlace your story with your message, which I think is wonderful. But I'm so much looking forward to hosting you here today to really deep dive into your story. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, man, thank you. But to that point, I am actually an introvert, and this keto lifestyle has really changed a lot. In terms of my focus, productivity. But yeah, again, I was actually supposed to be on another podcast about a year ago, but I was so afraid that I'm gonna butcher it, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared for it, and I had to apologize to the host. But man, I wasn't ready then. But I know I do have a story to tell, and I'm so passionate about this lifestyle because I know a lot of people out there are suffering like I did. I suffered from chronic anxiety and major depression about 6 or 7 years ago, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But yeah, that was the reason why I'm just I'm an introvert inside, but I love to share stories, and finally I get to share my story.
Wow. Well, we really appreciate that. And we're so grateful that you would want to do that. We know how difficult that could be to be, feeling like you're very vulnerable with your story. And so, again, we really appreciate that, mostly because I know that that's going to help somebody else. Somebody's going to be able to relate to your story out there, and our listeners are going to be able to get a lot out of that. It's funny that you say that. I recall just through this conversation, today is the 2-year anniversary of our first interview that we ever did here at Boundless Body Radio. It was 2 years ago, and it was my wife and I chatting and kind of doing our introductory episode. And I told her as we were coming to the time that we were set to record, I went up to her and I'm like, let's do a few more practice rounds. Let me play with editing a little bit more.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful for her to say, like, no, we got to do this. Like, the longer we wait, the less our message is going to get out there. And again, I'm really grateful for her for pushing me, because I feel like I've got a little bit of that introvertedness
Mhm.
as well, and sometimes it's really difficult to feel like you have to get over that kind of imposter syndrome or whatever it is. So again, we're really grateful for you that you'd come on our show today to share your story.
I'm honored, man. I'm honored.
Awesome. Well, you grew up. Let's see. Did you grow up in Canada? I know you're in Canada now.
Yeah. No, actually, I we immigrated. My family immigrated here about 16 years ago. And at the time, I was um, 17. And yeah, but when we moved here, I was, I have a lot of friends. You can imagine, I was starting college at the time, and they had to bring me here. No, I don't know anybody. I don't have friends here, and you can imagine as a teenager, that's such a culture shock. So yeah,
Very traumatic.
mhm.
Very
Yeah,
traumatic. Wow. Wow. Where were you from originally?
Philippines.
Oh, cool. Wow. Yeah, no, that can be really challenging. I remember moving schools in like middle school or something,
Mhm.
grade six, grade seven, and it was really tough in the middle of the year. I can't imagine changing an entire country. How was that for you to adjust to?
I would say the language I had to learn pretty quickly because in my mind, to be able to, I was I started I think when we moved here, they put me in grade 11, put me back in grade 11. And in the Philippines, I already finished high school because we didn't have grade 11 and grade 12 there. So you actually finish high school earlier and you get to start college. But when I started here, I was put back in high school, and it was actually, yeah, it's a culture shock for me. But met some friends that helped me really cope with that, and I was with my family, so it was an easier transition compared to somebody that would come to this country by themselves. And so I did have my family. I did learn the language, and I was able to find friends, and now we're here today, and we're thriving. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I met my wife here. This will be our uh, third anniversary coming up in January. So yeah, it's been a wild ride for me, but this Canada now is my home.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I'm so glad you include pictures of your family on your website. You guys are so cute together. Your little girl is
Thank
absolutely
you.
adorable. So cool. And congratulations on the upcoming anniversary. That's fantastic. So I'm curious, the education systems, were they vastly different in the Philippines and Canada, just besides the fact that you had two extra grades? Were the systems very different?
It is actually it's since high school. You only take about there's 4 years in high school, but the difference is there's no there's no grade in 9 and 10. That's the only difference. And the difference with the education is it's it's a lot like college here for high school, but in back in the Philippines, you cannot. You know how you can choose your subjects. Back in the Philippines, you can't do that. There's a set subjects when you come into a year, right? But in here in high school, you can actually, when you get to grade 11, grade 10, you can actually pick your courses for college. Back but in the Philippines, you can't do that. There's always a set subject for each year. So that's the main difference that I believe. But in terms of levels of education, I believe um, here when I got here, I was actually lazy in my studies because I felt like I've already studied this, and I had my wife. Don't tell my wife, but I had a girlfriend at the time back home, back in the Philippines, and all I wanted was to get back to her. And so I was 17 at the time, so I didn't know I didn't know any better at the time. But but yeah, that's the only main difference is that the system is different where you can choose your subjects here.
Yeah, so interesting. What was the difference in the food that you were consuming in the Philippines versus when you shifted over to Canada? I imagine that was a pretty big kind of switch.
Well, since I was with my family, it was the same because of how were brought up. And my mom is the main cook in the house. Even though we came to Canada, she's still the main cook. So she brought about the same um, mentality here. She was cooking the same foods, and so yeah, that was the main thing too. Is I remember when I was younger, I used to be able to feed myself, like meaning, they would give me money and just buy whatever I like. So I would be snacking on junk foods all day long. And my mom, they were busy back home, and so they weren't able to um actually look after us because they were so busy with work, and we were just um managing ourselves. And I was that was the main thing for me. We were They were put a lot of responsibility on us in feeding ourselves. And so what I did was I just buy junk foods, and I would be filled with junk foods all day long. And that's what it's when we came here in Canada, that was the main thing. That was the same thing. Is I didn't know anything about nutrition. I didn't know anything about how to feed myself. The only thing I know about what healthy is was just eating chicken breast and broccoli until I found keto. That was the only thing, but I couldn't do that. I knew that wasn't sustainable.
Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah, I would have done the same thing if I was your age and given a bunch of money. I would have gone and spent it on junk food as well. When did you start to notice health issues?
Oh man. I think for me, health issues started when there was a point in my life that I was, I at work, about 6 or 7 years ago. I started a wild roller coaster ride for me, um, which ended up in a major depression because so I was 25 to 26 years old at this time. So your listeners can grasp my age, and it was the darkest time for me. I was at a job that I hated. Developed chronic anxiety, and I dreaded going there. I was somebody that lived for the weekends, right? So for me, it started with I didn't know nutrition at the time, so I was just eating whatever I like. I would diet. I would yo-yo back and forth. I don't have a lot of weight on me, but I dabble into exercising and dieting. But I was always somebody that's would look forward for summer, do a bunch of exercises and be on a short-term diet. And so it that went on for years. And 6 or 7 years ago, like I said, um, I was at a job that didn't appreciate me. So one night, I experienced a severe panic attack. I was, beyond freaked out. I thought I was actually going crazy, and it brought me to my knees. And I actually thought I could die because there was a point where I couldn't sleep for 3 straight days. Be- I was able to sleep. It's almost like an irrational fear that is this debilitating fear that I had at the time. And I think, because I didn't know much about self care and caring for myself, now we all know about that. And um, before all of this, I thought I knew what self care meant, but I was somebody who suffered from that. And I was also a product of ignorance, right? From a culture that doesn't believe in mental health, right? I know it's only being more talked about now, but it's still ways away in my culture. Like I said, I'm Filipino. For your listeners, it's considered by many to have toxic ideologies by the same people, obviously, who has been exposed to other cultures. But um, one night I was experiencing severe panic attack. I was beyond freaked out, and the next few months, I would be followed by this debilitating fear. Um, my friends, I wouldn't see friends anymore. I was MIA. I didn't see anyone outside my job, and I was so scared. And I was so scared. There was so much fear. I slept um, on my parents' couch in their bedroom, and that's how scared I was. I didn't know why I was feeling scared, but my body is just in constant fear. And to also just a background, also important to point out that my mom told me about this story about my grandfather, who he died early in his late 40s, also suffered from debilitating fear. He was so afraid of heights that caused him to ever graduate from college. He couldn't go to his classes because it's, at the top floor.
Wow.
And you know it's true, like these things happen. So at the time I decided to deal with this fear, because when I heard that story, I'm like, man, my grandfather actually let his fear stop him from graduating college. I don't want that for myself. And so I wanted to deal with this fear, but I didn't know how to deal with it. So I started reading, calming myself down, and they call it. I was reading up on this, and they call it the fight or flight mode. So after I had that severe panic attack, it's like this. They call it the sympathetic nervous system that was turned on, that I was experiencing, and it was a response of your body when there's too much anxiety, too much we like in this nowadays we're overloading ourselves, right, with things that with news, information, everything. And when our fight or flight is turned on, your body is always it feels like it's in danger. So that's why I couldn't sleep for 3 days. And I want to give my wife some credit. If not for my wife, I don't know, what would have happened. She was still my girlfriend at the time, but she saved me because I was able to tell her everything. Like I was somebody that's been ruminating with negative thoughts. When the fear started, it's just irrational fear. And she was so strong, and she gave me strength to keep fighting. But there was a point that she broke down because it was weighing on her too, and I realized that um, even though she's listening to me, I'm the only person that could help me. Like I'm the only person that can um, get out of this fear. And that story from my grandfather actually helped me so much, because I wasn't gonna let that happen to me. I wasn't gonna let fear stop me, but I don't know how to, but I know it's not going to stop me. So that started my self-discovery, self-love. I'm not, this is just the development, character development that I'm building. I don't know anything about nutrition yet at this time, but this is the time when I knew that the system couldn't help me, right? I went to the doctors, told them that I couldn't sleep for 3 days. And what did they give me? They gave me a sleeping pill. Saw me for 2 minutes. I was waiting for 3 hours. Saw me for 2 minutes. Gave me a sleeping pill. That's when I knew the system can't help me. So I did more research and went from a therapist after therapist, and found a specialist that uses CBT therapy, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. In the beginning, for people that don't know cognitive behavioral therapy, it's like they give you practices, like assignments, and it's like staying present in the moment, um, helping you, point you to the right direction. Not a lot of practitioners do this, so it was a complete accident for me to come across this specialist, and it helped me. To me, in the beginning, it was all cheesy for me at the time. Again, I didn't believe in mental health and mental illness because of the culture that was and the conditioning that I was from. But doing all the personal work, and I was desperate. If you tell me I have to do this to get better, I'll try everything. And I audited everything in my life, and I cut off everything that wasn't helping me. Started journaling, started gratitude, reading self-help books, meditating. And this is a point where when I found Jay Shetty's book. Jay Shetty. He doesn't have a book at the time, but he's the author of what's the word? What's the book? I forgot the book, but look at Jay Shetty. It's he's spent as a monk for 3 years, and now he's on YouTube, spreading positivity. And I found Michael Singer, Michael Singer's Untethered Soul.
My
Those.
fate. That is my favorite book. My absolute favorite book is The Untethered Soul.
Man, I read that book for I can't even count anymore. Every time I have to remind myself I read that book, man.
I do too. Once a year, and like the opening kind of statements of that book is like there is a voice in your head, and you're not that voice. When I read that for the first time, that was like a 2x4 hitting me upside the head. Like, what? Wow, crazy. I love that.
And he has the same kind of experience that at one point he couldn't stop his thoughts, and that actually resonated with me, and I've been following his journey ever since. And I had to really work on myself along with personal development tools. I added exercise, and of course I associated looking good to being healthy, which we'll get into later. So I got lean, but I'm still not in the right mental space looking back now. And so when COVID hit, I was in a low fat diet, mostly chicken breast and broccoli, not knowing what healthy meant, and weekly cheat days. And that was 3 years before keto. I was been doing that, and I still have chronic anxiety and depression, but were manageable when I started working on myself. But I have no clue what healthy meant. There was still something missing. And when I started keto, everything changed for me. I was experiencing mental clarity that I've never experienced before. I can list everything that all the benefits that that happened to me, but I just felt free. I felt like the shackles were off. I was somebody that actually cannot read past chapter 1 without falling asleep. I have a focus problem. I have a learning disability. I had problems, focusing on one thing. And when I started keto, everything changed. And as we all know, our brain is energy intensive. And looking back, my brain was starving, right? I want to talk about Amber O'Hearn, a science writer.
Amazing.
I stumbled upon her work, and she's been studying and experimenting with low carb ketogenic diet since 1997. And she was also somebody that had major depression and bipolar disorder in her 20s and in her 30s. And with a change in lifestyle, she was able to put it in remission. So, and her talk was all about development of the brain from when you were born into adulthood. Like when we were born, we are actually in the state of ketosis.
That's right.
And the topic that resonated with me was when she talked about how the brain is energy intensive. 20 to 25% of the energy we consume goes to the brain. And what I realized about my lifestyle before was when I was depressed and had chronic anxiety, I was eating a low fat diet and a moderately low carb diet. And what we don't realize is that not all low carb diets are ketogenic, because on a keto diet, carbs must be low enough to start actually producing and utilizing ketones. I may be low carb then, but my blood sugar and my insulin levels are not low enough to stimulate burning of stored fat. So I'm low in glucose, I'm low in fat. I'm lean, I look very lean. You might have heard of, how prominent depression is in the fitness industry, right? So my brain was starving. I've had many people on the show talk about it, and that was what happened to me. I was a world class. I wasn't a world class bodybuilder like them, right? But my brain was starving. As you may know, fat cannot fuel the brain since it cannot penetrate the blood brain barrier. So fat that makes it to the liver is converted to ketones. and ketones are shuttled to the blood and the brain to be used as energy. So that was my story. And when I heard her talk, I was like, this was it. This was what's happening to me. My brain was starving. Like I said, I I felt free. I I then started a podcast. Uh, like I said, we're about to hit 100 now. Like also going to be our second anniversary. And when I this is an energy crisis that I had. And if you are somebody that has low moods and has chronic anxiety and major depression, look at educate yourself on how to fuel your body. Start there because it may just be an energy crisis for you.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You mentioned Amber, who is absolutely wonderful. We've been fortunate enough to host her twice on our show, and we've both been able to host Nicole Laurent, who talks a lot
Mm,
about this and driving up ketones as fuel for the brain. So I would encourage our listeners to go to either one of those, episodes that we've done or episodes that you have done that talk specifically about ketones for the brain. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm curious to go back when you found keto. How did you find it? Where did you discover it? Was somebody talking about it? Were you following a certain somebody? Like, how did you
mm.
find it?
Yeah, so actually I heard keto from a cousin of mine when he was, obviously we know keto to, induce, rapid weight loss. And so he was doing it. He was able to lose about 200 pounds. But and this was 2 years before I even started keto. So I heard of keto. It was in my radar, but at the time I wasn't ready to hear it. At the time I was doing, intensive exercises 4 to 5 times a week. I was in this a short-term diet that, mostly, chicken breast and broccoli, and I didn't want to hear it. I'm like, okay, I'm lean. I don't need keto. I thought keto was just for weight loss anyway, so I really didn't uh, dig in deeper. But when COVID started, when everything shut down, I wasn't ready. I didn't have equipment at home, so I couldn't go to the gym. I was working from home most of the days, and that started my weight gain. I I I gained about 30 pounds in 2 months, and as you can imagine, staying home, having food accessible all the time for you. Um, I was exhausted, and I'm like, let me give this keto thing a try because I wasn't gonna because for it's so hard to lose weight in a negative caloric deficit. It's so hard. So I couldn't wrap my head around losing 30 pounds in this in in a standard diet, in a standard chicken breast broccoli diet. I can't imagine myself having to lose 30 pounds. So I'm like, okay, let me try this keto thing. And I know my cousin, he he lost about 200 pounds being on it. And so I tried it, and within just a few months, I was able to lose the weight, and I gained so much more. And I was like, my mind was blown. I didn't know what was happening at the time. And looking back, I felt free, and I didn't know what was going on. So I started my podcast to learn more about, regular people, just regular people. What's going on? What's going on with me? And I started listening to podcasts, reading up on what keto is, and but I want to learn from people. That's why I started the podcast. I want to learn from people, regular people like me, regular people like me that has the same stories. Because in the beginning, I wanted to interview people with stories like I was you know that gave them so much freedom. And so um, my mission is to let people know that there is an option, there is another way. They don't need to suffer needlessly because there is another way. And with what I experienced with depression and anxiety, there is really no need to suffer.
Yeah.
And every day that I get up in the morning, that's what I do. I actually don't do this just for PR or whatnot. I I wanted to impact one person. I want to impact that one person who's willing to listen, and it may change their life like it did for me.
Yeah, wow. That's so cool, man. I absolutely love that. You mentioned the negative caloric balance and how that kind of fails. And you and I talked about that when you hosted me on your show.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting. I need to steal this analogy a little bit more. I believe I stole it from Gary Taubes, and I think it's a really great way to explain it to somebody. Is to say, like, I'm going to invite you to the best banquet dinner you've ever been to in your entire life. Come hungry. We're going to have the best food. You can stay as long as you like. You can eat all of the best foods for as much as you want. It's all on me. What things would you do leading up to that event to be able to capitalize on the event? So I'll ask you, what would you do?
Mm, yeah, I will mentally prepare myself in that situation, and I would definitely have to be present in that moment, because there's a lot of unconscious eating going on with you know obviously we all heard about we eat unconsciously when we're watching TV, Netflix and chill. There's always food around, right? And it's harder and harder to navigate this society. And if you're not aware, or you're self-aware with what you're doing, your emotions, your if not checking in with yourself, it's so easy to fall victim into this way of lifestyle, this way of living. There's so many processed foods now. There's fast foods in every corner of your city. It's so hard to navigate this life without slipping up. And if we don't help each other, and you got to start with yourself. Just stop just recognizing your excuses. For me, I have to be in the right mental space before I even attend sort of event, the said event. Because if I would go there hungry, right, I'm not setting myself up for success. I'll probably eat before I go, right? And I
Okay.
would probably bring something before I go, because I would focus on the social aspect of it, not the eating aspect of it. And that's what I would say, is just focus on talking to people, the social side of it, and be um, conscious in your decision. Be conscious with all of your decisions, because one bad decision can lead to another. When you say yes to something, when you slip up one day, it's easier to slip up it's easier to slip up the next time. And so you have to really know, you really have to be accountable with all your action, and be conscious enough with your decisions, so that and again, if you do slip up, that's okay, right? As long as you know yourself, that you can bounce back from that. And again, like I said, prepare before, be in the right mental state, and focus on the social aspect of it, not the unconscious eating side of things.
See that is such a beautiful and amazing answer. I should have expected nothing less than that. And even in that answer, you answered in the way that I would expect most people to answer that question. If I want to go hungry, or if I want to be hungry for that dinner, I'm going to make sure that I don't eat during that day, so I'll be really hungry. And then I also maybe will like try to burn off more calories. Maybe I'll go on a run or something, because I'll use up more energy, and that will make me even more hungry. And you said a good way to approach that dinner is to make sure you eat before you go, because you're going to be less hungry. So again, I love that answer. But when we look at what that is and what's going to drive somebody's hunger way, way up, well, all that is a normal diet. We're describing combining a calorie restricted diet with a lot of exercise. It's exactly move more and eat less will make you very hungry. And that's the problem with so many of those diets out there is they make you
Mm.
feel very deprived and very hungry. And that's why a ketogenic diet is magic. It's what, Gary Taubes calls like the holy grail of diets because you're not hungry and
Mhm.
you're naturally just kind of consuming less calories because you've lost your hunger. You feel really satiated, probably for many people the first time in their lives. So again,
Mhm.
I think that's a wonderful way to answer that question and still arrive at the same conclusion. I do want to ask you, going back to when you started the ketogenic diet, did you notice benefits in your mental clarity, or was that something you had to study to be able to understand at first?
At first, I wasn't aware enough to just. This is just looking back. In the beginning, I wasn't aware that my energy was changing. I was just experiencing more productivity. I was just experiencing I had more energy. I could do more things. Um, when people say I like I said, I can't imagine myself starting a podcast, be consistent enough to upload once a week, and you do it 3 times a week. You're definitely killing it here. But I I was somebody that's you know I was just different. Like I had a learning disability that I couldn't. It's so hard for me to learn in school. It's so hard to me for me to understand something like right that where while my other classmates were understanding pretty quickly. And I was somebody that's spent a lot of my summers studying because I failed a class. I was somebody that's never finished a book before, let alone do some you know start a podcast or start a business. When it was happening, I didn't know it was happening, but I was just being more productive. And after a year and starting a business, starting a podcast, just looking back, I'm like, what was different? It was my energy. Like, um and we were talking, and I know you might have uh heard of Amy Berger, author of Alzheimer's Antidote,
Yeah,
the
she's
Alzheimer's
amazing. We
Antidote.
posted her 3 times. She's amazing.
Yeah, man, like the way she talked about how keto is so effective in treating a lot of neurodegenerative diseases. She puts it in a way that a lot of people can, easily understand. And so, like, they were talking about how keto was so effective in, treating a lot of these diseases, type 2 diabetes, other chronic illness, lowered inflammation, improved blood sugar control, and improved insulin sensitivity. Why is keto so effective in all of this, right? And we start to, I myself, when I say, okay, oh, keto can probably help you out. Um, like we become, like, for people, cuckoo, because we are actually talking about so many type of diseases that keto can cure, right? And Amy Berger, uh, she quoted Jeff Volek, chief science officer and co-founder of Virta Health. Virta Health is an organization that focuses on reversing chronic diabetes. She quoted him, and he said, "Keto is a really big hammer, and there are a lot of little nails out there." Right. So that was a great quote right there, because keto is all about that, all about inflammation, all about energy. Our brain is starving. These are all energy problems that we have, like, that's plaguing our society today. And it resonated with me once again. And looking back, all of these things that are listed here, um, you know, with obviously fat loss, energy, improved brain health and brain health function. These were all happening to me. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but now it's all making sense. It's all making sense. And
Wow.
I'm a different person. I'm telling you right now, Casey, I'm a different person back then. Not because different character. I'm the same guy, but it's like I'm free. Like I don't know how to say it. I feel free.
That's amazing. Wow. I can so much relate to that. And with the clients that both you and I see out in the world and the stories that we hear with people, that's just very consistent. We hear that all the time with people who feel like, they were eating and snacking and always hungry all the time, and all that
Mm,
stuff goes away, and then their skin clears up, and then their brain
mm,
is more clear, and their IBS goes away. And there's just such a long list of things that we could talk about as far as things improving on a ketogenic diet. And I love the way that you used that Jeff Volek quote. I think that's a really good way to look at it. How has your ketogenic diet evolved over time? I understand that you have kind of gotten into even like a no carbohydrate diet or a carnivore diet. Can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of your ketogenic diet over time?
Yeah. So when I first started, it was really an eye opener for me, right? I was really excited starting the diet. Looking for like my in the keto community, you're so excited because there's so many things that are new to you. All right, the fat bombs in the beginning. This were first few weeks on this lifestyle. You had the fat bombs. You have the wrong way of starting it, but either way, it's healthier than what was previously my lifestyle, right? So just learning about how to ketofy all my favorite meals, how to I was starting to cook more at home, and so it was just an exciting time for us. My wife also started it with me after a few months, I think, and we were loving it. We were losing weight, and and um, and as I learn from people, as I interview people on the show, I've learned that you can actually improve your cognitive health by switching to a carnivore lifestyle. And so for me, I'm not carnivore right now. I jump back and forth into carnivore and keto when I would need to lose a lot of weight. Let's say, I ran a 5K for the first time last weekend, and I went on carnivore 2 weeks before that so I could lose the extra weight. And it's absolutely amazing because on carnivore, it's keto is great for brain function, cognitive health. But when you switch to a carnivore diet, which is basically an elimination diet, you're eliminating everything but meat, but dairy. So when you are on a carnivore diet, it's like I describe it as the same effects of when you're fasting. You're clear, your energy levels are through the roof, and you're never hungry, you're always satiated for longer hours. And that's how I see carnivore. It's a tool to for me. It's not sustainable for me yet, but it's a tool for me. I'm strict keto right now, but whenever I feel like I need to improve my health more, my cognitive function more, I jump back and forth.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to think about it. I think that's totally fine to understand that that is a tool, and you don't have to do that for the rest of your life. But there might be times in your life where going a little bit more strict on carnivore would be really
Mhm.
helpful. You mentioned your wife, which I think that's fantastic that she eventually jumped in with you. I was going to ask, how has it been with you changing your eating with a family, not only your wife but also your daughter? How has your transition into a ketogenic diet affected and impacted their diets?
Yeah, that was huge. They're huge for me because a lot of times it's actually when you start a lifestyle like keto, you really have to look at your environment and change your environment. And with their help, I was able to do what I do now because if they don't, if somebody, if you're maybe your spouse, somebody that you living with you, or it doesn't support your lifestyle, it's really hard to transition to a ketogenic diet, because a lot of times there'll be snacks laying around, um, that can trigger you, that can trigger a person into, slipping up. And so having my wife, buy into this lifestyle, because she knows the research, she knows what I do, she knows about all of the guests that I have on the show that's had tremendous benefits, tremendous life changing stories, and that's how she was able to buy into it. But for some people, it may be so not so lucky, because when your partner isn't all into a lifestyle, there may be some friction there, that if you're not so disciplined with your lifestyle, if you see, snacks laying around, or if your partner is the person that cooks in the family, it will be very difficult for you to make a change. So um, her switching for me, and she did also have some benefits. She lost a bunch of weight, and but yeah, like I said, it's she's been a blessing to me. And my daughter, I think it's a little harder for her, a little harder for us to switch her completely, but just because it's really hard to feed a baby steak, right? And there's really hard to, and milks nowadays are filled with sugar, so we haven't found an alternative yet for her. But as you know, as we go, I'm we are actually making cookies for her. We're making um, uh, low sugar yogurts and all of that. But for the most part, she is low carb. But with babies, they are much quicker to switch to ketosis. Like until 3 to 4 year old, I believe, within 2 hours they're back into ketosis. Um, I forgot the speaker that talks about this, but babies again were born in a ketosis state, and within a few hours of eating, let's say, a cereal in the morning, within a couple of hours they're back into ketosis. So we are we are meant to be in a ketosis state when right when we were born. And so yeah, that she's a blessing for me, and she allowed me to do what I do now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing that. It's so interesting with parents how they, handle the food situation. I recognize that this is very, very challenging and difficult, and kids should be able to handle a certain amount of carbohydrate a lot more than an adult can. They're
Yeah.
in growth phase. I think kids can do great with rice and with fruit and all that kind of stuff. And so you definitely don't want to be totally over restrictive. Just kind of a funny side note. We were at a family gathering just this weekend, and it was our nephew's 1 year old birthday,
Mm.
first birthday. And so they made him a cake. They tried to make it as healthy as they could. It was soy free and gluten free and all this stuff. They put tons of coconut oil in there, and the kid loved it. It was so cool to be able to watch. I was surprised at two things. First of all, I was surprised that I could see the cake and it didn't really affect me. It didn't bother me one way or another. It could have been a notebook,
Mm.
it could have been like a speaker. It was just an object. And it is funny because that would have, very highly tempted me in the past. And I think once you've been low carb or carnivore for long enough, your
Mm.
desire for those things kind of go away. The other
Mm.
thing that I saw is the mom was starting to like kind of eat spinach leaves raw, and I almost felt like this crazy aversion. I almost got like a little nauseous or something. And my wife, she felt really bad about this. She couldn't stop it. It just kind of came out. She was like, "Mom, are you going to eat those raw?" Like kind of disgusted. And she caught herself. She's like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I feel really, really bad about that." But it is funny, once you eliminate some of these foods,
Yeah.
like sugar just kind of loses its power. And a lot of the
Yeah.
like kind of bitter vegetables that I used to eat multiple times a day, they don't
Mhm.
it's almost opposite. They look
I
terrible.
think Maria Emmerich coined that phenomenon where if you switch, I if you switch your mind from I can't have that to I don't want that, that's when you're actually um, you know, your lifestyle becomes more sustainable. Like
Yeah.
when you switch that to I don't want that. Right now, most of the, not all of the products that I see are I don't want that, but some of it I can't have that. But as you go along, I think that's what's happening to us is it's not worth it for us to be, because for me, when I eat off plan, I would feel it right away. I would feel so sleepy, and that's not good for me. I need to be productive in my days. I'm sure you know the feeling, but some days I can't. It's not worth it because I would be knocked out, for hours, and that's not good for me because I need to be productive. And um, also, depression can also, you know rear its head again when I would, slip up. And I that's something that, a good reminder for me to stick to plan. But I'm
Yeah.
not perfect. Sometimes, I would slip up, but it's always a good reminder that I need to stay accountable, stay consistent.
Yeah, I can relate to the tiredness, the sleepiness, and also anxiety. When I eat
Mhm.
sugar, my anxiety goes through the roof, and it's just not worth it. It's easier for me to be
Mhm.
abstinent. So,
Absolutely.
okay, so you mentioned the fat bombs earlier as a great transition onto a ketogenic diet, and I 100% agree. When somebody is just learning how to do this, I don't care what they eat. It could be not the most ideal thing, but if it's
Hmm.
coconut oil and it's butter, or it's tons of bacon, or
Yeah.
the snacks, the keto snacks, whatever, I see so much value in that. I think a cool benefit of the ketogenic diet is over time, the need to snack kind of slowly goes away a little bit. I mean, you
Goes away.
decided to. It goes away for most people. You decided to start a company, Basic Keto Box, where you're putting together boxes of keto snacks for people. I think this is wonderful. I think this is great for two options. I think this is really great for somebody who is either just starting out or they're struggling to stay with it. I think this is a great option for them. And I think also with kiddos, if you don't want to load up your kiddo with a bunch of
Mhm.
chemicals and sugar and all this stuff, we can use these types
Mhm.
of snacks and gives our kids options on which ones they like. So tell us a little bit about your company and how you are running it and how you're helping people with that.
Yeah, so started Basic Keto Box in Canada, because I found out that when you were, again, when you were started, and you talked about this a little bit, that it's really hard to transition into a ketogenic lifestyle because, one, you're looking for your favorite foods, you're looking for crunch, you're looking for that sweet salty taste in your taste buds, that it it's not sustainable for you to switch into the keto lifestyle. But when you, like, I experienced this for myself, when I have the ability to have a choice that I can have an alternative to my favorite food. Like, let's say if I'm looking for crunch, I have pork rinds, right? Instead of the, your classic lace or whatnot. And if you have that available to you, then you're less likely to slip up. And I found out that if you do that in the beginning, it's so helpful for a, like, everything. For me the food aspect of it is one thing, and another is the mental side of things. Like, if you have to be satiated in the beginning, and if you have snacks available to you, then again you are less likely to slip up because you do have choices. You do have pork rinds, your cheese snacks, your sweet snacks that are alternative to your favorite. And when I started Basic Keto Box, I I feel like it's helping me too because I was able to find new snacks for myself, for my family, and I'm like, why not share this with people? So my so my box, we curate, we handpick all the snacks, and we put it in the box for families. And what we found out that, kids actually enjoy these snacks too, and it's a healthier option for them. And it's not just for keto dieters, it is for people that are actually looking to get into a healthy lifestyle, and have another choice. and most of our snacks are non-GMO, gluten-free, and very keto friendly. And so it is also a way for us to educate people on what keto diet is, because most of our subscribers are mostly you know people who want to lose weight, and also some people that just want to stay healthy. And there's really a negative uh, there's a negative stigma about keto that's unhealthy because of its rapid it induces rapid weight loss. And for most people it cannot be healthy because of that rapid weight loss. And you eat this and that, you eat a lot of fat, a lot of this. So we actually use our platform, the basic keto platform, to educate people about what keto is really is. It's not just about snacks. Snacks are a huge part of it, but it is also a vehicle for us to educate people on what keto is. If you can, um, we give them meal plans, we give them newsletters, we give them just small pieces of information on how to really start the diet. You can, like I said in the beginning, snacking are is important because you're transitioning to a lifestyle. You're not used to it. You're not used to not having snacks. And so also you mentioned when you transition deeper into the keto diet, when you learn about what keto is, you start to clean out your diet. And I don't imagine people subscribing to the box for longer than 2 years or 1 year. That's fine. Like my main goal and my main mission for basic keto is to spread the awareness, spread what keto is, and help you transition into a lifestyle so it's sustainable. um yeah, so we've been running for a couple of years now. um and it's been a wild ride for us, but the main mission is to help people transition into a lifestyle that they deem to be very not restrictive. I'm here to tell you it's not. There's a lot of options out there for you now. There is lots of alternatives now, and it's much easier to start a keto diet now more than ever.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I love how much you talk about the sustainability piece of the ketogenic diet. And, when you sent me your introduction, I made a few creative edits and added some things in there. And I totally regret it that I added these are snacks for people on the ketogenic diet. I wish I would have taken that out because you're right. I'm so glad you clarified. This is good for anybody. You don't have to do a ketogenic diet if you don't want to, but you can still benefit from using these snacks. They're way better than the crap that you can find at the grocery store and
Mhm.
gas station. So it's not just for those people. I love how you're using that for kiddos as well. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And I absolutely love your message and your intention and putting this kind of education and good vibes out there. Your site also offers coaching. Is that correct? Is that one-on-one coaching?
That site so I'm not certified yet, but I do have a friend that I partnered up with, and her coaching is available for Canadians that's interested in that's wanting to start a keto diet. And if you are interested, you can go to basicketo.ca, and you will receive a discount if you do subscribe to her coaching program. But I will be certified I believe in the next month as I finish my courses. But yeah, right now it's I partner up with somebody in Canada, a friend of mine in Canada, that coaches other people
That's
start the
amazing.
keto
Yeah,
diet.
that's
Mhm.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Cool. Yeah, I saw that on the website. That's fantastic. Again, I just absolutely love what you're doing and all the different ways that you're helping people. Lawrence, one more time, where can people go to find out more about you and connect with you and your work?
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram. um, you can find my podcast at you can even Google it, Ketones and Coffee Podcast. It's available on all the major platforms. Basic Keto Box is available at basicketo.ca or basicketobox.com. We ship all across North America now, and if you're interested, you can. I'm gonna give Coach Casey a code to use. We can put it on the description here, And my coaching will be available very soon, one-on-one coaching. It will be available next month, and we'll probably update the description when that happens. And and I do have a TikTok where I'll do silly stuff, just talking about how to navigate a lifestyle when you start a diet. And I'm sharing all the information there, going into restaurants, talking to restaurant owners, yeah, keto restaurant owners. And yeah, it's just just my mission is to let people know that keto doesn't have to be difficult, right? You can navigate this life. I know it's harder and harder to navigate this society with all of the different, processed foods that's coming out right now, and fast foods. But join to be accountable. You can join a community, and you can also follow accounts like mine, like Coach Casey, to stay accountable, right? Yeah, that's it.
That's amazing. Well, again, we're so grateful for you and all of your work and the way that you're sharing this message of positivity. And again, all the different ways that people can find you and work with you. If nothing else, just the podcast. You do such a great job on the Ketones and Coffee podcast of telling that story and sharing that message for free, where everybody can find that and understand how to incorporate this in a way that's simple. Might not be easy, but it would be simple and something that, like we said, is very sustainable. So thank you so very much for all of your work, and thank you for making time to come on our show today. We really appreciate you, Lorenz.
Thank you so much, Coach Casey.
Absolutely. It was such an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.